Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. On today's episode, we are chatting about performance anxiety and stage fright. Yep, you bet. We're going to address this because it happens to most of us. And in business development and entrepreneurship, it happens more often than you'd like to admit. So today, we're going to normalize it a little bit. We're going to have some discussions around it and hopefully come up with some coping strategies to make you more effective. Stay tuned.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 13 of the Business Development Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you today. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been reaching out and sending thank you messages, telling me your stories, sending ratings and reviews my way. Guys, I appreciate it so much. My guys and gals, my business development and entrepreneurs of the future. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I appreciate all the kind words that have been coming my way with regards to my podcast and frankly what it's been doing for yourselves and your businesses. I've had so many great messages, thank yous, reviews sent. I just wanted to reach out before this episode starts today and just give another thanks, because the reality is I couldn't do this without the support. It would be very hard to continue to do this week over week and put myself out there in this way, which is frankly for me quite vulnerable, and be able to provide this information if I didn't know that it was helping people. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who have reached out, left me a rating, a review, shot me just a quick email and just let me know your story or a LinkedIn message. To those of you that have, thank you. It means the world to me, and it truly allows me to continue to do this and feel great about it. So thanks for all the support. I appreciate it. We hit a huge milestone yesterday, actually. We have now crossed the 1,000 downloads mark, guys. That's huge. We're on episode 13, and we have now, I believe, close to 1,100 downloads. So for those of you who have listened to the show and who continue to show up week over week, I appreciate you. I love you. I appreciate all the support, and I hope that I can continue to drive value for both yourself and your business. Okay, let's move forward. I wanted to address my last week's guest, Justin LaRocque. Justin, I just wanted to shout out and say thank you so much for your support of the Business Development Podcast. Justin has been advocating for this podcast basically since my first couple weeks. He kind of reached out and said, "Hey, I see what you're doing here. I see that you're an entrepreneur and you've been trying to use this outlet to get your word out." And he just wanted to say that it was great and that he was inspired by it. And he's looking to do kind of the same thing with video over time and potentially do a podcast of his own. So just wanted to say thank you, Justin. Thank you for coming on. You were an inspiration to everybody who listened to that episode. It was huge. And your discussion on working capital and what people can do with regards to their receivables and hopefully getting paid on time was highly, highly beneficial. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for putting yourself out there, and you're killing it. And guys, if you guys need any financial advice, if you're within Canada, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to Justin LaRocque of Rock Advisors. Okay, well, Today is an interesting episode. It is an episode that is timely for me because I have told you plenty of times, I am a bit of an introvert, right? We have had this conversation. Well, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So let's put those two things together. Bit of a perfectionist, bit of an introvert. What do you get? You get somebody who struggles at times with stage fright and performance anxiety. I know it's kind of hard to believe because I run a business development firm. Now I operate a podcast and I go to plenty of meetings with incredibly high level people and sit and have normal everyday discussions with multimillionaires, with incredibly successful entrepreneurs. And it's awesome and it's incredibly nerve wracking. And I would be lying if I said that I did not get performance anxiety and stage fright sometimes when I was going into these meetings. I actually had a meeting just this week where I hadn't experienced it in quite some time. And it was with somebody who I look up to immensely, who frankly is incredibly accomplished, 1,000 times more accomplished than I am. And sometimes being in a room with somebody like that can make you feel a little bit small. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a millionaire in a room of billionaires. The reality is there's always somebody out there who is more accomplished than you, who frankly you look up to, that, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's just an acquaintance, or maybe it's a client, but there are always people out there who can sometimes make you feel a little bit small. And I wanted to make this a bit normal, okay? Because we don't talk about this. We don't talk about this in university and college. We don't talk about how nerve-wracking and scary it can be sometimes to be in a room or have to pitch a product to a bunch of people who frankly you feel are more accomplished than you, who you look up to. And with that can bring a sense of anxiety, specifically stage fright or performance anxiety. And I wanted to talk to it today because I want you to know that if you experience this, if you experience stage fright, nervousness, whether it be in an interview, whether it be in a meeting with a client, whether it be any type of situation, public speaking, you are normal, okay? I want you to know this. You are normal. I experience this too. Many, many, many entrepreneurs and business owners and business development people, we all experience anxiety. We all experience nervousness, and you are not alone, okay? I want that to be the number one message you take out of this today. If you experience anxiety, performance anxiety, or stage fright, or a fear of public speaking, or a fear of meetings, or just maybe a fear sometimes of like even events, like maybe you're in a chamber ball or something and it's like there's a lot of people and you start to feel a little bit overwhelmed. I want you to know that you are normal, okay? You are not abnormal. You are normal. And I think by the end of today's episode, you're going to realize that. And hopefully the next time that you are in this situation, you don't work yourself up over it quite as much, okay? So let's talk today about what is performance anxiety and stage fright. The definition I went with today is from BetterHelp. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but BetterHelp had a really good definition on this. So I just want to go with that today. Performance anxiety is a fear about one's ability to perform a specific task. People experiencing performance anxiety may worry about failing a task before it's even begun. They might believe failure will result in humiliation or rejection. Performance anxiety can vary between individuals. Many people experience a mild nervousness before giving a speech or doing a recital, but for some individuals, the thought of performing can cause panic attacks. While performance anxiety can occur with any task, anxiety around a public presentation or show is actually called stage fright. This is the more common one, guys. This is truly the more common one in the entrepreneurship and business development realm. Most of the stuff that we're going to experience is technically called stage fright. And that's where we are essentially going to go up in front of a group of people and maybe do a presentation. We're going to have a meeting with somebody who's incredibly accomplished, who maybe freaks us out a little bit, or we're just going to be put in a situation where we have to be uncomfortable and speak to a crowd. And this is definitely called stage fright. And here are some of the symptoms that we get in this situation. So common symptoms of stage fright include excessive sweating, heart palpitation, chills, and elevated blood pressure, a feeling of a knot in your stomach, increased errors in the performance. This was me. Shaking and nausea, backing out of a performance due to just inability, like you just feel unable to even do it. So I want to talk to this a little bit and my experience, okay? So I would get stage fright early. So if I knew that I had like a meeting that day that was really important, let's say that I had in my younger days, an interview for a job that I really wanted, or I knew that I had to do a public speech, heck, before I was even rolling for that day, I would be going over it back and forth in my head. And what would be happening is I'd be failing in my head before it's even happened. So kind of talking to that first part where it talks about you're essentially failing in your mind before you even start, okay? And so that would happen with me, and I would just work myself up, and to a point where, like, frankly, I would start to get like a fear, almost like a crazy tightness in my chest, right? Like, at the time I didn't really understand what anxiety is. Frankly, I haven't really experienced anxiety in my life. Not truly. I had panic attacks when I was younger, but they were like kind of one of things. But I didn't really experience anxiety in my life until my mid 30s. So it was a later thing that kind of came on for me. So at the time, I didn't even understand what I was experiencing. But at the time, what I was experiencing was anxiety. And it would be like a tightness in my chest. I would start to get kind of sweaty, and I would start to go over it in my head over and over and over again. And unfortunately, it would just feed the beast, right? Every time that I did that, it would get worse and worse until I would show up for that interview or that meeting, and I would literally be shaking. And when I would be having that conversation, sometimes I couldn't even talk. Like, I know this sounds crazy. It sounds a little bit hard to believe coming from somebody who's now, my job is talking. It's business development. Heck, I have a podcast, right? But there was a time, let me tell you, when this would not have been possible for me. It took a lot of practice and repetition for me to get good at public speaking. It took a lot of practice and repetition to meet with people over and over and over again until I lost that fear, which, frankly, let me tell you, I just said it at the beginning of this episode, it still exists, okay? What I want you to know is everybody experiences this, and it never truly goes away. What happens is you get better at handling the situation, okay? So over time, after you meet with people over and over and over and over again, and hopefully most of the time, let's say like 95% of the time, those meetings go very well for you, you start to desensitize and step away from the anxiety response that was so automatic for you before, which is why I was kind of talking to you guys about confidence and just working your way through things, because truly showing up and just doing your best, whether that be showing up to do the meeting, give your pitch, even if you're scared, even if it's hard at first, you are only going to get better at it with repetition, which is why consistency and repetition in business development is critical to you getting better at it and having more success as you move forward. So I want you to know that even career performers have pre-show stress. So civil rights activist Mahatma Gandhi struggled with public speaking for years. Guys, Gandhi struggled with public speaking, okay? Singer Barbra Streisand experienced severe stage fright at the height of her career. So, like, imagine that, guys. Like, not even at the beginning of her career, which I imagine she had then too. So I think this is kind of like just a weird thing from the internet. But ultimately, people who experience stage fright, we always experience a certain level of stage fright. Even at our most successful, even when we've done it 1,000 times, there are still circumstances, and I want to put it this way, there are still circumstances which will trigger a stage fright response in you, okay? I wanted to talk to this because I literally had one of those this week. So guys, I have had probably in my business development career at this point, I want to say thousands. I think that that's a fair statement. Probably thousands of meetings in my business development and sales career. And I still, at times, in the right circumstances with people that I either look up to or that I find incredibly accomplished, when I go to have that meeting, I can experience stage fright. I still have those moments. Why? Because I'm a perfectionist and I want to look good. And even though I can't control that, like I can control what I say, I can control how I show up to that meeting, I can't control how I'm perceived. No, but none of us can. We can't control that, okay? And unfortunately, we're, as business owners, entrepreneurs, business development people, we try our best to control a situation to the best of our ability, right? We try to give ourselves the best possible odds of showing up smart, concise, like we know what we're talking about, respectable, right? We do our best at that. But the reality is we actually don't control the situation. And I think most of us do end up experiencing a stage fright or some type of just a feeling of lack at times, okay? And I want you to know that that is incredibly normal. You do not lack anything. You are probably amazing. You are probably showing up as best as you could given the situation, okay? And I want you to know that it's okay. I truly want you to know that it is okay. It is okay to be scared. It is okay to have stage fright. It is okay to experience anxiety. You are a normal human being. Heck, you're doing it anyway, okay? And that's all I can say. The best thing that you can do is just try to do it anyway, because if you get through it, if you get out the other end, the next time is just going to be a little bit easier. And you are amazing, and I believe in you, and you can do it. You can work your way through the scared. You can work your way through the stage fright. And you can overcome performance anxiety. Okay. It was a tough one today. I wasn't sure whether or not to do this, to be honest with you. This wasn't planned. This episode was not planned. I did not plan to do this. I just happened to have a day where I was experiencing anxiety, and it had been a very long time since I've had this type of anxiety for the reasons I have anxiety for. And I want you to understand that business development people, entrepreneurs, we put ourselves in some pretty hairy situations sometimes, right? Like there's a lot riding on us, or at least we feel that way. Whether or not there really is or not is kind of up to your perception of it. But we definitely put ourselves in situations where we feel like the world is resting on our shoulders. And a lot of times we take on and bite off more responsibility than we frankly deserve, probably a lot of the time. And that can cause insane anxiety. I think business owners, entrepreneurs, business development people have a little more than usual because we put so much on ourselves for the success of our business, right? Or the success of the businesses we're working for. I put a lot of effort into being incredibly successful. I am so driven to win. I love winning. We've talked about this in plenty of podcast episodes before this. I do my best to win, whether that's on behalf of myself and my company, or whether that's on behalf of my clients. I want us to be successful. I want to do everything that I can in my power to make us successful. And I think you probably do too. If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a bit of a perfectionist. You probably want to win. You probably are incredibly driven because you are the type of people who listen to this podcast, okay? And I want you to know that if you experience anxiety, if you experience performance anxiety or stage fright, or you've been in meetings where you felt maybe a little bit undervalued or underwhelmed as compared to the person you're meeting with, it's okay. We've all been there. We've all felt that way. And I just want you to know that it is normal. You are normal. You're probably doing better than most, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who wouldn't have even showed up to that meeting. They might have walked away. They might have got scared or canceled. And I've sat around some pretty brave people. I've been in, I'm not going to say who it was, but I've had somebody even on this podcast who, frankly, I was so proud of them because they overcame a lot of fear to be on this podcast. There was a lot of fear around talking to me through a podcast. And I know it sounds kind of weird because it's like you think about it and it's like the podcast is nothing until I produce it and send it out to the world, right? Like the reality is there is editing that happens behind the scene here. There are things that are done to try to make this podcast a little bit better, to make the interviews flow a little bit smoother, usually minor, but there are things that need to be done. And even with that understanding, there was a lot of fear regarding this conversation, regarding having this conversation with you, my listeners, and being vulnerable. And I want you to understand that there's a lot of vulnerability in coming on as a guest. There's a lot of vulnerability in doing a podcast like this and putting yourself out to the world. And I just want everybody to understand that I am proud of all of you. I am. Anybody who gets out there and you put yourself out there and you try business development, or you try to do a podcast, or you try to be a guest, even though you're afraid, or you do a public speech, even though you're afraid. It's doing it. Bravery isn't not being afraid. Bravery is being afraid, but doing something anyway. It's being afraid, but taking action despite being afraid. And so every day that you get up and you're brave and you do something that, even though it freaks you out, even though you're in a room with a bunch of people that scare the crap out of you, maybe, if you do that, you are just a little bit braver than you were the day before. And one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be so strong and so brave that almost no meetings are going to scare you. And I hope that inspires you today. I hope that there's a little bit of inspiration that you get out of that, to just understand that even me, a seasoned business development person, frankly, an expert at business development at this point in my life, I still get afraid. I still have moments that freak the shit out of me. I still have meetings with people who, frankly, I'm pretty accomplished, and I can be sitting in a room and look up and realize that I am nothing compared to the accomplishments of the person sitting across the table from me. And it's normal. It's normal to feel that way. It's normal to feel anxiety. It's normal to be afraid. It's normal to be in tough situations or have hard days. And I just want to speak to it as well from the standpoint of, We all live lives outside of our business life, okay? And those things factor into our business life. So if you're struggling with things at home, if you had a hard week, if your kids, man, you know, when we have kids, kids are tough. Kids are tough. They put you in tough situations that you never expected to be in and that you don't, frankly, have a lot of control over sometimes. And life happens. You know, we are humans first, business people second. Please remember that. We are humans first. We experience human emotion. We experience human challenges. And I want you to know that I am proud of all of you because we get in and we do this day in, day out, and we run our businesses. We grow other people's businesses. We have meetings and we're rock stars despite dealing with human challenges week after week. And so I want to end this episode today just by chatting a little bit about what performance anxiety is not, okay? So performance anxiety, it does not indicate a lack of talent. Let me repeat that. Talented people experience performance anxiety, stage fright, and just anxiety in general, okay? Incredibly successful, accomplished people you look up to, I guarantee you, experience performance anxiety and stage fright. So you are not alone. You are not alone. And there are things that you can do. Not a lot, right? Like obviously we have to work through these things because they're human fight or flight emotions. They're human fight or flight emotions. And there are things that we can do to kind of try to get over them. But really the thing that I've found best is to try to push through. Even though it's hard, even though sometimes sitting down and having that meeting with somebody that you were shaking when you're heading into that meeting with is pretty damn hard. Believe me, I understand because I've been there. What I can say is most of those situations where I've ended up in that situation where, frankly, at first I could barely talk, at first I was shaky or nervous or sweating or God knows, maybe all of those symptoms, that by the time I got about midway through that meeting or midway through that interview, I felt a lot better. You start to realize that the person you're sitting across the table, even if they're incredibly accomplished, even if they're billionaires, they're also humans, guys. They're just humans. They're just people. They experience family challenges. They experience kid challenges or life sucks sometimes. They are just as normal as you and me, okay? So what you'll find if you take on that meeting, even though it freaks you out, is that by midway through that meeting, you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to calm down. And hopefully you're going to realize that it wasn't worth the workup in the first place. And the next time that you head into a meeting that is similar, it may still happen, but it probably won't be as bad, okay? What are some things that you can potentially do to reduce this anxiety or this stress? So if you experience a severe performance anxiety, like I'm talking like you get so worked up, maybe you have a meltdown, maybe you're crying, maybe you're dealing with just insane anxiety. And I just want to start this out by saying, if this is you, once again, you are normal. This happens to a lot of people, and there are ways through this. If you experience this level of anxiety to the point where you cannot perform, you cannot show up to that meeting, or you have to reschedule or cancel, I would suggest potentially looking into some therapy. Therapy can help you work through this. And over time, I want you to know that you can recover. This is something that you can recover from. This does not have to be a death sentence to your career. You can work through this in therapy. So if you experience a level of anxiety that does not allow you to continue, please consider looking into a professional therapist that can help with that level of anxiety for you. The next thing is maintain momentum even if you make a mistake. So we chatted about this before when I was talking about how if you push through, it can help you. So I've had plenty of meetings where I was anxious or I was struggling, and I just kept going. And I knew I made a mistake, or I knew that I slurred a word. And heck, you guys have probably heard me slur a word on this. And no, it's just because sometimes I talk fast and sometimes the words jumble together. It just happens. And if that happens, don't freak out. Don't necessarily stop or start to feel bad about yourself. It's best off just to keep going. If you just keep going, I think you'll find that the momentum will carry you through to the next point. And if, like I said, if you get far enough along in this meeting, it can definitely help you. It can help you perform better the next time. The more meetings you complete, the easier it gets over time. The next thing is visualize success. So heck, you're sitting in your truck before this meeting and you're freaking out a little bit. In your mind, instead of picturing a horrible outcome, start to picture a good outcome. And I know that this is easier said than done. Believe me, I understand this. But just in your head, try to visualize it. Visualize a successful meeting. Visualize what a successful meeting would look like. What happens if you make a really great impression with this customer? Do you win a big contract? What do you get from it? I want you to picture the wins in your head. Try to picture the wins. Try to cancel the negativity cycle. What we need to do is we need to interrupt the negativity cycle that's going round and round in your head. So I want you to take a minute and try to visualize a success, okay? Here's a big one. This one's a big problem for me, and I think was an incredibly huge contributor to my anxiety this week. Was I ended up having a lot of caffeine. I love coffee, guys. I'm a BD guy. We live on coffee and lunch. We live on coffee and lunch. But the reality is that I drink a lot of coffee, and I had a really important meeting this week that freaked me out a little bit. And I had quite a bit of coffee that morning before I had that meeting, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was a contributor to the anxiety that I was feeling going into that meeting. And so my tip, okay, and this is a tip to me too, Kelly, if you have an important meeting, reduce caffeine intake that day. Maybe don't even have caffeine until after the meeting. Maybe that can be your little reward. If you have a successful meeting, go have a cup of coffee, because or maybe during the meeting, after you've already calmed down, maybe then have a cup of coffee. But caffeine before your meetings, guys, it can jack up your heart rate. It can jack up that sweating response. And the next thing you know, you're feeling anxious, okay? Stay hydrated. So another one, obviously being dehydrated is never good for our ability to think. If you are hydrated, your brain functions better. Everything functions better. So make sure that you're hydrating. If you know you have a meeting that day, maybe instead of having coffee that morning, maybe switch it out for some water. Have a good sleep. Yes, good sleep. Okay. We all know if we're tired, if we've been dealing with cranky kids, or we're just exhausted, our brains are not functioning properly. It makes it incredibly hard. It makes it incredibly hard on a good day, on a day that you don't have a ton of meetings if you're tired. So make sure that you're getting a good sleep before days that you have critical meetings. Hydrate, drop the caffeine, and I think you're going to be a little more effective. And then if you can, this depends. It depends on the situation, but if you can, eating before the performance can help you. So if you just have a bite to eat, sometimes that can calm your nerves. It can put you in a bit of a relaxed state, and it can help you before you head into that meeting. So I know a lot of us are typically meeting, especially if you're in business development or an entrepreneur, we have a lot of lunches. Sometimes we don't have that necessary opportunity, but maybe what the trick is on that day is that we have breakfast, right? Make sure maybe on the days that you're going to have an important business meeting, whether that be a lunch or just something in the afternoon, make sure that you're having a good breakfast so that you are fueled and ready and everything is firing on all cylinders. All right. Well, holy cow. I did not expect this episode to be our episode today, but it is what it is, guys. It is what it is. And sometimes I'm going to shoot from the hip on these. And this particular one, it fell out of left field. I wasn't expecting to do one on anxiety, but yeah, from time to time in this adult, incredibly busy entrepreneurial life that I live, I experience anxiety, and it is normal. And if you experience anxiety or any other challenge, I want you to know that you are normal too, okay? And just want to thank all of you who have continued to listen, who continue to tune in week after week, who have liked, subscribed, sent me reviews, sent me messages on LinkedIn, just letting me know that this is helping you. Guys, I appreciate it. Guys and gals, I really, really appreciate your support of the Business Development Podcast. And I do hope that I can continue to pump out information that is valuable and helps you grow in whatever capacity that you are trying to grow. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed the show, please head over to my website. Please hop onto Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and if you could subscribe and leave us a rating, it would be greatly appreciated. It allows us to reach further customers and further listeners, and hopefully we can benefit a whole bunch of people over time. Once again, this has been Kelly Kennedy. You're listening to the Business Development Podcast. This has been episode 13. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Until next time, we'll see you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.